Hello, and welcome to another episode of our podcast. My name is Nate. This is my lovely wife, Deanna.
Hello.
And this is the Photo Album Podcast. We've got a new show for you today. We are trying something a little bit different. We're going to keep trying new things because we are learning as we go. And we're having a good time doing so. Today's episode is going to be all about me. I'm going to be really just telling my story, what brought me to where I am today, how different things impacted me throughout my life, and really kind of just brought me to where I am right now. And I hope that, you guys can take something from this. I hope that it lets you know a little bit more about who I am and, what I believe. And again, why we're kind of doing this podcast, why we're doing this brand. And I'm not one to talk about myself. So this is a little different, but I think that it'll be good. I think it'll be good to put it out there. And I'm looking forward to doing so. I just want to take this time to remind our viewers and our listeners to give us a follow on social media. Give us a subscribe. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you don't mind. We're trying to put out new content frequently and often. We put these podcasts out at least once a week, and we're going to keep doing this until we can't do it no mo. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and follow us now and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it, and we hope that you'll tune back in future episodes. Before we get into this story of my life, what is going on? What is happening in our life right now?
Our lives right now.
Yeah.
Well, last week, I guess the beginning of the week, Sunday, we celebrated Thomas's 5th birthday party. Happy birthday, Thomas.
Happy birthday, Thomas.
And that was at one of the coolest places, I feel like.
It was pretty cool.
We've taken the girls in a sense of just like a exclusive place. Obviously, they've been to cool places, but I just mean it was a cool little indoor theme park, so to speak.
I'll be honest, I haven't been to a ton of these indoor playgrounds or theme park type things.
We've been to one other one. Well, I've taken the girls to one.
Yeah,
other
you
one.
went. I didn't go.
That was fine, but I mean, it was that was that one was like Clementon Park. This place was Disney World kind of a thing. I mean, not that Clementon Park serves its purpose. I just mean, that was like Disney World.
That's a New Jersey thing, I think.
That's a New Jersey thing, yeah, I think. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was pretty cool. In fact, we made a video of it. You should be able to see it if you want to check out our social media pages. We just did a little video of all the different things there. And if you have kids, I think up to the age of 13, it's a great place to to go hang out.
They had a great time. They really good time. And the only thing about it was your dad going down the slides. I was getting he's going down with Adeline. I was getting nervous.
Yeah, I agree. I saw him go down a couple times, and I thought, I'm not even sure I'd go down that slide.
I was like, you're brave, because I feel like I wouldn't.
And my dad's 70, so
right. And he was fine. I just mean, there was just a part of me that was like, any adult, I would have been like, oh my gosh, please don't break your body going down. Because they were fast. They would hit that last hump and just fly.
I tried getting up to that slide. I hit my head twice.
Yeah.
Luckily they were padded, but on the bars, obviously this place is made for kids.
Yeah.
I'm sure they don't encourage adults to go up there.
It's roaming around.
And now I know why, because I'm pretty sure I injured my neck.
Yeah. One of the moms was like, I just bashed my nose.
Yeah.
I think I broke my.
Well, Teresa hit her head on something, and I was actually filming at that moment too. But I checked back later. It did not capture. That would have been funny though. I would have sent that to her. But yeah, I definitely hit my head a couple times.
So it was a great place.
It was a great place for kids.
A little bit.
We don't recommend adults going.
Right. Everything was kid-sized, so you were just you were out of place as an adult climbing up to the top. But no, it was a great. It Good place for the kids. The girls loved it.
Good time.
And then, we went out today to the city. Saw Beauty and the Beast.
Right. Beauty and the Beast. The musical.
The musical.
Right?
Yeah. Well, we saw it on. Well, I guess it's off Broadway, but
yeah, I don't know how that works.
Call that. But the girls went to your parents' house, and it was really cute because Annie. I don't know. They were talking about how they ate butterfly cakes. I don't know what those are, but they sound adorable. And so tonight, every night, I'll ask the girls what they're thankful for before I put them to bed, and then they'll thank God for it. And so Annie brought up that she was thankful for the butterfly cakes. But the best part is the way that she'll pray is, dear Jesus, hope you had a good day. So everything is hope you something. Right. So even the things she's thankful for. So hope you had a good day. Hope you died on the cross today. And he's repeatedly dying hope you died on the cross. Then she's like, hope you had a butterfly cake. Hope you, it was just so, and every time she prays, I feel like the Lord is looking at her just beaming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just so cute.
For sure.
Hope you enjoyed your butterfly cake. Hope you had, a good Valentine's Day. It's just really, really cute that she's, hoping the Lord did all these things.
Yeah, I was listening in, and it was really cute.
Yeah.
You mentioned Beauty and the Beast, and I did make a video of today.
Yeah.
It was for Valentine's Day.
It was.
We went out for Valentine's Day. By the time you hear or see this podcast, several weeks have probably gone by. We pre-record these episodes, obviously, but we went out for Valentine's Day, and so we took the train over to the city, over to Philadelphia, and I recorded stuff.
Just know the video, as good as it's going to be, I sabotaged it many times by picking the worst seats to sit in on
the train. The seats with no windows.
I panic. I step on that, and I feel like it's going to start in seconds, and I'm going to go fly into the back of the train.
You do got to grab on before it takes off.
Every time, I'm always like, find a seat, quick.
And then I could see you watching me, seeing where could I put this camera. I've got this little magnetic, tiny little camera. No one really notices it, but it's good for different angles, different points of view that most people wouldn't normally see. And so I'm looking all over the train for, magnetic parts. And, she's just going, please don't put that on the ceiling.
You know what? It's just, well, first of all, I feel like someone's going to see you tampering with the ceiling, and they're going to for next thing we know, the train is dead stop, and we're getting escorted off by we're planting something on the train. But also I'm thinking, if this doesn't, the train is rickety. So if it pops off and slides, I'm not crawling on the subway train floor to find your camera. I mean, when we lost your drone that one time, I nearly died to try and get it when we did the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Right.
No, I didn't really almost die. But I mean, I did a risky maneuver and found out that it was only a solo cup. It wasn't even the actual drone. But I was like, I will not crawl on this floor to find this little camera.
That. Now, in their defense, those are newer train cars, so they're not as dirty as the old ones used to be. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily want to do it either.
Newer by what?
I want to say in the last 5 years they've updated those.
You think? I feel
Pretty sure, yeah.
New in our minds. We've gotten to the age where you'd be like, that's newer, but you realize it's 15 years old.
Yeah, I don't know. I know what you're saying though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Time does go by, and 5 years is actually 10
it's
or
15. It's actually 10 or 15,
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, today was a good day. It was a good time. It's always nice to go over to the city, and then we came back and picked up our kids. Back to reality. But it was cute. Kept hearing Molly go, because the girls were like, well, where are we going today? And Molly would go, we're going to Mimi and Pop's because Mommy and Daddy are going on a date. That's right.
It was cute.
That's right. All right. Well, that is what's happening in our lives right now. But I'm going to go ahead and dive into this, and I'm going to tell you really what's happened in my life since the very beginning. Like I said before, the purpose of doing this is really just to let our viewers and listeners know who we are, who I am, how we've gotten to where we are, and what has kind of brought us along this way and landed us kind of where we are today. And so I'm just gonna kind of start from the very beginning and it just explains some things that I've thought about that I think have absolutely molded my life and who I am and throughout the years, and just kind of how I walked away from the Lord for a period of time and then came back, and I'm gonna talk about myself. This is weird for me, but it's important. So from the beginning, I was born and raised right here in South Jersey, and I was born into a very loving family, very loving parents who just set a good example, and I feel fortunate that I was born into the family that I was, because obviously that's not always the case for a lot of people, and that's where everything starts. That's where you just get molded at the very beginning, and it's such a huge impact on the rest of your life. So to be born into a family that just cared about each other and cared about me, that was crucial. Now, right from the very beginning, right, a shaky start. I was actually born with what's considered a birth defect, and I was born with a cleft lip and a cleft palate. And I don't know the odds of how many kids are born with that, and how many or how many people that affects, and what the numbers are there. But I do know that it was a big impact on my life as a young person. I think about what my parents would have had to gone through. I had doctor's appointments all the time. I had multiple surgeries as a young child, and even as late as my early teenage years. And being a parent now, it's like, man, I would hate to have had to have gone through that with any of my kids. Yeah. And I think that right there just kind of shows you what kind of parents I had. And man, I'm so grateful for my parents.
I think your mom said something about having to hand you over at a few months old to have your very first surgery.
Right. Can you imagine?
And just being because you had to hit a certain weight, and all of you kids were huge babies.
Yes.
And so she was like, you hit that weight so early, way earlier than a lot of other kids, especially who have that defect. And so, yeah, she was, I want to say, she said, I might be wrong, but I want to say she said you were 2 months old, really, really early. But maybe
right.
maybe I'm misremembering that.
Right.
But you were not yet a year.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously there's pictures. My mom's got plenty of pictures of what I looked like then, before and after surgeries. But hopefully since then, modern medicine has advanced, and they're able to, do much better work at an early age, and maybe reduce the amount of surgeries that there are. But I can tell you that through all that, as a young child, there were still visible, defects, if you will, to my face, and there still are to this day. I've got a crooked nose. I don't think you can see that from you might be able to see that, but my face has never really been symmetrical. But obviously, as a kid, I'm sure anyone listening or watching can understand that that's a tough thing. And so the reason I bring that up is because, that absolutely impacted how I acted towards other people, and how I how I leaned on just the comfort of my parents, and even the comfort of family, and even the comfort of the Lord at a young age. My parents were my parents were Christian parents by the time I was born. And if anybody watches Nate Bargatze, he makes a good joke about 80s and 90s parents being the most Christian
of Christian parents.
Right. Yeah, that was my parents. They were very 80s and 90s type Christian parents, and so I bring that up because I can remember times of just kind of not really knowing how else to handle the situation, except thinking about just the Lord and being able to have a relationship with the Lord at a young age. So I was saved at a young age, and that was definitely a safety net for me, which I bring that up because that comes into play later in my life. So here I am, a young child. I've got an obvious physical attribute that other people can see, and you guys know how kids can be, and it was not easy at all times. And again, so I bring this up because not because I want anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm not looking for anyone to sit there and think, man, what luck this guy had. That's not it at all. In fact, I think in the world that we live in, it's so easy to take the hand that you've been dealt, and if it's a bad one or a negative one, how easy it is to just blame everybody else and try to get people to feel sorry for you, and how that impacts your future and how you continue to live your life. So I think that's important to just kind of bring up because it did impact my life. I'm happy to say that I really think grew from that. I found the positives in that, and it definitely changed who I was at a young age. But so as I'm growing up, I'm going all different kinds of doctor's appointments, and I can remember too being at some of these appointments, just seeing some of the other kids there that had the same condition as me, but were impacted much more severe. And that was always something that I was aware of. And when I say more severe, I mean, mental handicaps that are associated with that birth defect. I think that might even be more common. I might even be like the rare. I
think you're the rare exception. Yeah.
Right. So, I'll always remember seeing those other kids at the doctor's office and just kind of being like, well, I may have it bad, but I don't have it this bad. So. That was, I guess that was a good thing for me to experience. But fast forward a little bit, going through life at that age with that, it could be tough at times, getting made fun of, just kind of not really getting the same things that maybe my friends would get treated, especially, with the opposite sex. Obviously, at that age, you start to realize.
How old? What age are you talking about?
Probably, like preteen, okay. Just being like, hey,
because how old were you when you had your last surgery?
That was probably, I might have been 15.
Oh, wow. So it went.
I think I could have been a little bit younger, maybe like 13, but I want to say 15 because well, I'll get to that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I think it was like 15. But I just mean like, a little bit earlier than that when it was like, all right, there's, I'm finding some of these girls cute, where my friends maybe are getting a different reaction from cute girls than I was at the time. And, for me, it was just like, well, yeah, that's because I look different. Mm-hmm. And that's because, I'm just not, I don't look the same as any of my friends or any of the other people in school. But, and again, I bring that up because that does come up again later in my story. But at some point in my early life, my parents, my dad has always been very hardworking and just always putting in the hours. And, my parents never really had much. They raised us. We were raised what's the word? Frugally, if you will. And that's great. I think that's a great thing, and I think that also shaped who we are.
Your parents were very responsible,
for sure,
with their
But at one point, I'd been going to Christian school my whole life, and then a day came where my parents just couldn't afford it anymore.
Yeah.
So I believe in fourth grade is when I started public school, and public school it's a different animal. It's a different animal. You're no longer surrounded by, if you want to say, like-minded people, or just it's just a little different. And I'm not knocking public school by any means. I think there are a lot of great things about public school, but obviously the way that I got treated because of how I looked, I could see a clear difference probably from day one. And of course, being the new kid in school,
sure,
you're going to get that, regardless. But yeah, that I mean, I can remember specific instances of just people that I didn't know being just a little bit more harsh than what I was probably used to. So, I went to public school from fourth grade until I graduated, but it was, and again, at this point, I'm already a Christian. I was going to church every single Sunday, twice on Sundays, because my parents were 80s, 90s Christians. And because
it was the 80s and 90s, and everybody did
right,
that. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Everybody did that. We were going to church on Wednesdays, right. Whether it was like
it would have been Awana at the time,
right, right. Pals and Pioneers, the Sparkies. So yeah, I went through all that, and that was great. That was all great for me as a young person. I really needed that kind of stuff in my life.
How much would you say you clung to church friends at that point, because you would have left Christian school and gone to public school?
It's a good question. I mean, I would say that the friends that I really hung out with were like my neighborhood friends.
Yeah.
And that was and it's actually good to bring that up, because those are probably the friends that I hung out with the most, and they knew that we were that Christian family that we weren't allowed to go out on Sunday afternoons. So we'd be my brother and I'd be watching TV on a Sunday afternoon, and I don't think there was any reason behind that from my parents, except that they just wanted to be able to take a nap.
Yeah, and
I totally understand that at this age with kids. Something I think we should maybe consider implementing. But yeah, so the friends that I hung out with were kind of the same neighborhood friends, at any given day, but they knew that we were that Christian family. We weren't allowed to do the same things they were. We weren't allowed to curse.
Yeah, right.
We weren't allowed to, who knows, whatever strict things that Christian families don't typically let their kids do. The same things we won't let our kids do. And so that also, made an impact on me and even my brother, because it was kind of like, people just anticipated that we weren't going to be able to go out with their family,
right.
Without my parents coming, or without, things like that.
Yeah.
So that was a big impact too, because that, as a kid, it's like when your parents aren't letting you do what all the other parents are letting their kids do, it makes you feel a certain way, and it impacts how you act and who you become. So finally, I'm getting into my early teen years, and at some point, I'm sure I just started to kind of have enough of it, and I was like, I need to do something that's going to maybe impact my life and change who I am, and maybe attract maybe attract girls that, because that for me that was big. That was a big thing for me at that age. I wanted to be able to attract.
I think that's a big thing for most.
I would imagine so.
That freshman, sophomore year?
Right. So I made the decision to teach myself how to play the guitar.
But you'd already played piano,
right?
I think that's a big point. You'd classically trained on the piano,
right?
So the teaching yourself guitar, you had like a leg up in that,
right? So I've been playing piano almost my whole life, and that didn't help with.
Well, right. Yeah, the piano doesn't hold the same same status as guitar.
It wasn't cool then. Guitar is still cooler than piano. I'm sorry to say it, but it all just kind of added to the person that I was, and I'm going to say
braces, glasses.
I'm getting there too. So because that's who I was. So before I really started playing the guitar, I had these thick glasses. I had braces, but I had braces for I might hold the world record for how long I've had braces on. Yeah. I think I had them at least 5 years. I could be wrong.
That does seem like a long time.
It does, but remember, I've got this birth defect,
right. and they never went to like a retainer or anything.
Well, yeah, but look, there was a lot of stuff. So one of the things I was going to mention, and I think this might be funny for other people to interact, is when I first got braces. I got 2 braces on my 2 front teeth.
That was it?
That was it. All right. So braces are bad enough, but only 2 braces on your 2 front teeth, that's another level. And man, I can remember the torture. I can remember the torture from that. And it just made me think like, I guess it wasn't as bad as back in the day when they were wearing these headsets, like the headgear and I'm just curious, anyone listening or anyone watching, what was it that you had to wear that maybe was worse than 2 braces? Is there anyone out there?
The full wire.
Is there anyone out there that had the full wire headset
with the chin strap and
or maybe something else? I think my sister had to wear like a back brace when she was in school. Yeah. And I know that's not ideal, but what? Let us know in the comments what was the worst thing you had to suffer through in
the
in
awkward
grade school.
High school, grade school years, right. Yeah.
So finally, I upgraded from the 2 braces to a full mouth of braces, and I had that on. I want to say 5 years. It felt like eternity, but I had braces on longer than anyone else that I knew, and so with the glasses, the braces, I had a terrible haircut, and I had nothing going for me, and I still have I still have the physical deformities of my face. I'm probably being meaner on myself than I should.
I think you're being meaner on yourself. Yeah.
But look, that was reality, and
it's your reality. Yeah,
and I can tell you this: I wasn't attracting any girls.
Okay,
that was a fact, and that was something that I think I was like, you know what, I need to do something, and so I thought I'm going to learn how to play the guitar. I've got this musical knowledge. I've got this old guitar in the basement that belonged to my dad that he got from his dad, and no one was playing it. So I just
was this like freshman year or sophomore year?
I think I was about 16. Yeah. Okay. So excuse me, earlier than that, probably like 14.
Okay.
So yeah, probably would have been like freshman.
Yeah, freshman year.
So yeah, I started learning how to play guitar, and it's easy when you're that age. Anyone out there that might be around that age that's thinking about learning an instrument, that is the time, because all you have is time to sit there and just figure things out. I sat in the basement so many nights just trying to learn other songs on this acoustic nylon string guitar that really wasn't ideal for anything other than really a specific kind of music. But I played that often, and I really taught myself a lot of things. I eventually upgraded to an electric guitar, and that was the coolest thing.
What a nylon string guitar? What would that be used for?
That's like more of a classical guitar.
So it's still like you weren't like, I taught myself how to play on a dobro. It was still like a real guitar.
Yeah, it was a real guitar. You tuned it the normal way, but it just wasn't like your normal acoustic guitar. It was really probably meant more for finger picking. It had a wider neck, so that was probably beneficial because then I could really train my hands how to use it. So picking up a normal guitar was probably a little bit easier.
Yeah, okay.
But doing that was beneficial because then I started to meet other people that were kind of into the same thing and into being in a band and into being in a rock band. And in high school I joined the jazz band playing piano, but that's kind of where I met some other guys and we all just kind of linked through music and we started starting our own bands outside of school, and so let me keep going here. I don't want to talk about, this specific part, but eventually the braces came off, and my parents finally allowed me to start wearing contacts. Mm-hmm. So the glasses were gone, the braces were gone. I had a couple years of guitar under my belt, and suddenly high school was just starting to turn up, and it was a lot more bearable. I was kind of becoming my own person. I was getting into different music that I had never gotten into before. I was meeting new people through that music, and it was great. I'm not going to say I was popular, but I definitely not popular, but I definitely found kind of my crew.
Yeah,
and that was something I'd never had before. So, continued through high school. I started hanging out with some upperclassmen that I was in the jazz band with, and I want to say there were a couple guys in that group that they weren't necessarily Christians, but I remember them being what you would call straight edged.
Okay.
And they didn't drink, they didn't do any kind of drugs or anything like that. And for me, it was like, wow, this is perfect because I don't do any of those things.
Yeah.
And they like this music, like bands like Earth Crisis. Anyone out there that knows Earth Crisis, that was the thing. You'd put the black X's on your hands. You'd go to the concerts, and that's what I was doing. I was going to concerts at that age over in Philly at some of the smaller venues, seeing these cool like hardcore bands. And again, it was just kind of part of an identity, and I was just really becoming a new person. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is what I've always wanted. And it was. And that's what I really wanted, because along with all that came meeting new people and meeting new girls. I was finally getting the attention that I desired from my prior years, and so that was huge. I started to meet new people, and at the same time, I also started to, I would say, grow away from the church. I started hanging out with newer people. Suddenly, the people I was hanging out with were, into smoking cigarettes, and a lot of the people I was hanging out with were into, drinking alcohol, and I still really wasn't doing much of that stuff at all at that point. But eventually, you hang out with that crowd often enough, you start to develop a taste for that kind of stuff. Sure. So, I'm proud to say I at least made it to like 18, the age of 18, before I got into any of that kind of stuff. And but also around that time, I was still playing in bands, starting some newer projects that were a little bit more exciting, and I also started to really hang out at my one friend's house so often that I would sleep there several nights, and not go back to my parents' house until the next day. And obviously, I remember my parents being like, "Are you smoking?" And I'd say, "Well, no, Mom. It's just the people that I hang out with smoke, and I'm around them. That's why my clothes stink. That's why But I'm sure by that point I had started smoking cigarettes. Yeah. So eventually I realized, hey, you know what? I'm working full time. I dropped out of college. I started going to Camden County College. I decided to stop going. I just didn't know what I was there for. I'm sure many people can relate to that. And I was only going to college because I was told that that's kind of what you do. Yeah. So I don't think I made it through a whole year at County College before I decided that, this is not what I want to do. I ended up getting a full-time job, and suddenly now I've got money. I'm not really at home much anyway, and the guys that I was currently in a band with were being offered a place to stay over in Philly for a good price, and I basically went home and said, "See you later, Mom and Dad. I'm moving out." So I think I was maybe 19 or 20 when I moved out of my parents' house. And of course, at that point, I'm now making my own rules. I'm no longer subject to my parents' rules. And, that's really when I started, drinking alcohol more often, still smoking cigarettes, started getting into all kinds of different other things. Mm-hmm. I moved to a couple different places in Philly, ended up moving back to New Jersey. But at some point, I started playing in a cover band, and the cover band was it was nice because I was making money doing that. Most musicians will agree that there's not a whole lot of money to make unless you're really entertaining and typically playing other people's music. So I got hooked up with a good cover band in the area, and I think I did that for maybe 10 years. And yeah, the thing about the cover band is that suddenly you are in a bar every Friday and Saturday night. Mm-hmm. And, there's, other than playing music, the only other thing you're really going to do in a bar is drink beers and drink alcohol. And so I was doing both. I was playing music, I was drinking, and probably at the time you're still allowed to smoke cigarettes in bars. So I was doing that too. But obviously, amongst all that, I'm meeting new girls. Something that I bring that up because, again, from my childhood, going through the things that I went through, as far as you could say rejection, for me it was like, I'm doing this because of the rejection that I went through. And I think it took me a while to actually consider that maybe was what happened, and maybe that's why I acted the way that I did, was because I went through all these early years of kind of being left out, or feeling left out at least, and being not included and rejected. So now I'm like, all right, well, I've turned things around. I've made some positive changes, and I'm going all in. I'm going all for it. It was also right around that time that, by the time I moved out of my parents' house, there was no one there to tell me that I had to go to church. So I stopped going. I stopped going to church. And at some point, I don't remember this too much, but, at some point I don't know if I ever stopped and said, you know what, I don't believe that God is real.
Sure.
I don't think I ever confessed that, but obviously I wasn't living a Christian life anymore. And I was more consumed by the desires of the flesh.
Yeah.
And, obviously I wasn't going to step foot back in church again, because by then, I was under the impression, as many of us are, and as many as people out there think, that, oh, you're living this way. People joke and they say, if I were to step foot in church, I would go up in flames.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people out there think that, and it couldn't be more opposite.
Yeah.
Church and faith in God and Jesus that's exactly who that is for.
It's for the broken.
For the broken, absolutely. Yes. And man, was I broken at that point. But I wasn't going to step foot in church. I was doing my own thing, and I was, at that time, I was loving it. I was enjoying it. I was the life of the party, and I was playing music, which a lot of people that play music don't get to play as often as I was, and get paid for it at the same time. And
you did it full time at one point, right?
Yeah, you could say that. I did eventually quit my full-time job and tried to see how long I could last doing that. And I'm sure that's a possibility too. But I was young and stupid, and I wasn't making the right choices, and it didn't last that long.
Yeah.
But one of those bad choices that I ended up making, and I'll be honest, I ended up making it on many nights, except that there was one night in particular where it didn't work out in my favor, and I was arrested. I was pulled over and arrested for driving under the influence, and that was tough. That happened actually down in Delaware. I decided, all right, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to, clear this up. I'm going to make sure I tell as little people as possible. I don't want anyone to know that this happened. And, I did whatever I had to do in the state of Delaware to get it all cleaned up, get it all out of the way. And I had no idea that I was going to get something in the mail from the state of New Jersey that said, your license will be suspended for 7 months. And so sure enough, it was. And at that point, your license is suspended. There's not a whole lot of hiding that, especially when my parents might invite me over for dinner and, I don't have a ride. And I'm sure I tried that for a while, and it just didn't end up working out. And I finally went over to my parents' house, and I kind of sat down and told them what had happened, and completely embarrassed, completely humiliated about it. And I can remember my dad telling me just some encouraging words, which I barely talked to my parents that much at that point. So for them to respond the way that they did was just it was exactly what I needed, and it really helped in that time. But I'll be honest, and I'll tell you this: losing your license makes it really difficult to drive.
Yeah.
But it does not make it difficult to continue to drink alcohol and continue to live in the way that I was living. In fact, I would say that it may have even made things worse, because suddenly I no longer have to drive. I no longer have to worry about how much I'm consuming, what I'm doing, what my actions are. And so I would say that there were times where, that got even worse and got out of hand. Again, with the alcohol, drugs, if you will, women, and it just continued to kind of snowball. But fast forward a little bit more, and I eventually got my license back, and I'm sure at some point I said to myself, all right, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm going to try to do better from here on out. And, there were other things in life that weren't going well. I was in and out of relationships, but the ones that I was in, unfortunately were just not your ideal relationships. It involved lying to each other and just going behind each other's backs, unfaithfulness, just things that when I think about it today, it almost makes me sick to my stomach, because I can't imagine living that way. That was tough. That was tough to be in those relationships and have them end the way that they did, and that takes a toll on you, especially as you're getting older and you start to realize actually relationship is what I need. But all of my relationships, not even just with a significant other, but my parents, my relationship with my parents still wasn't doing well, and I just kind of avoided them. So relationships in general, obviously my relationship with the Lord was non-existent. That just wasn't a part of my life. So, as time went on, I'd love to say that I got better and started making better decisions, except that I went ahead and made another poor decision, and again was pulled over for driving under the influence and arrested. And it was definitely a low point in my life, and that was tough. For anyone that doesn't know, your first DUI is in New Jersey. It's 7 months. You pay some fines. You go to court. You deal with some miserable things. But your second offense is much harder, and it's much worse. You lose your license for 2 years, and the fines are more hefty, and you even have to do some other programs and almost check in with what you would consider like a parole officer. And again, it doesn't get any easier to get around. The state of New Jersey definitely makes it difficult to be mobile by taking your license away, but they also require you to go to this place and go to that place and complete a certain amount of hours of community service. And, I'm not going to call my parents and ask them for a ride to go get this community service done. So I'm taking buses, I'm taking trains. And, another example, I think, of I'm at least proud of myself to say that I didn't try to blame anyone else for, the situation that I was in. Obviously, I could have sat there and said, "Well, I can't do this because I don't have a car and I don't have a license, and this is too hard." I had to get it done. I didn't have any other choice. And again, it's so easy these days for people to look at the situation that they're in and blame other people. And I'm at least happy to say that I took responsibility and I got these things done. It was difficult. It was miserable. It was expensive, but I did ultimately get through it, obviously. But at some point, something's got to click. Something's got to change. And I'm at least smart enough to know, like, hey, I can't keep doing this. But I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I never considered myself to have a drinking problem. But I just made really bad choices, and I was still playing in bands. I was still in a bar every Friday and Saturday night. And,
that's when it would happen, right? I mean, you would be leaving playing at the bar.
Right.
And
both times. Yeah. Both times I
it would be late at night. And yeah.
Right. Both times I had played a show, consumed alcohol more than I should have. And made the poor decision of driving home afterwards. And, the second time, I mentioned the first time was in Delaware. I think I was on my way to the Cape May ferry. I was going to take it from Lewis, Delaware to Cape May, New Jersey. And obviously I never made it. But this second time, I was on my way home from Atlantic City. We played in Atlantic City often. And, I right on the Atlantic City Expressway. So, but I didn't really have a plan on what I was going to do. I didn't feel like I needed to go to some kind of program and seek help. I just knew that I needed to start making better decisions, but I wouldn't know where to start. But one of the things that the state of New Jersey required me to do, probably the hardest thing, was I actually had to go up to North Jersey and spend 48 hours in what I would call similar to a halfway house. It was like a facility that people stayed at. There was a group of us there. We all had to check in on a Friday. I remember they drug tested people as soon as they got there. Not everybody got in. Not everybody passed that test. So I was in there with people that had probably, more. They were probably in a worse situation than I was for the most part. But I remember sleeping on these pillows that were like plastic. They weren't obviously, the feather pillows that you sleep on at home. And man, that's when reality's really hitting you, because, after that, the next step is you go to jail,
Right.
And in fact, I'm sure I potentially would have faced jail time with this second one, but, you hire an attorney, they can typically get you out of that situation. So I didn't have to serve any jail time, but as far as I was concerned, this was like the next worst thing, if you will, or the easier thing than jail time. So I checked into this place on a Friday night, and they make you go through the normal stuff and seminars, and they'll have speakers come in, and the speakers they come in and they've already gone through the same thing that I have, but their story is much more horrific. There was one girl that came in and talking about how she decided she made the same bad decision to get behind the wheel, and she was intoxicated and she killed someone. Oof. Maybe like it might have been someone in her car, a friend of hers, that didn't survive the crash that she caused. And that stuff's hard to listen to, yeah. But we've all heard those stories, I'm sure, and I can't say that was really pounding my head saying, hey, look, you don't want this to end up, you don't want to end up in this same position as this girl. But I'll tell you what, one of those speakers came in one night, and he was telling his story, but the difference is that he was including the gospel in his story. And so here I am sitting there listening to this, and he starts talking about how God has changed his life and how the gospel has changed his life, and he's saying these things that I'm sitting there thinking, I know this already. I've heard this story already, but why have I not considered this before? As I said, I was kind of looking for a way to maybe solve this, but this, going back to God never crossed my mind. And this guy was standing there preaching the gospel, and something changed, obviously, that night. Hearing him talk about that, because unlike probably a lot of the other guys in there, I was already wise to this. I already knew what he was talking about, and suddenly it just kind of all made sense. It was all kind of clicking at that moment. And I even remember, he was done talking, and at that point, I think we were all, allowed to go to our room, which we had to share with somebody else, and sleep on the plastic pillow. But a lot of us ended up staying down there and just kind of talking to this guy, and he was, telling us more things, and that was huge. That made a big impact, because I finally got out of there, got back home, and I can say that things were different from that point moving forward. And it just really made me start thinking and considering, my past, what I already knew. And again, how fortunate I was to have parents that raised me this way, that put these values in me, and how fortunate I was to be able to already kind of know where to start. And I remember nights after that experience. I remember nights, sitting on my bed and just kind of not necessarily talking to God, but just kind of sitting there considering, like, well, what if this is, the answer? What if this is the truth? And one of those things was, for me, was the one thing that I always kind of considered to myself and kind of told myself in my head was, my parents are the smartest people I know. The decisions that they've made in life, whether I agreed with them or not, always seemed to be the right decisions, or at least good decisions. And, my dad especially, just some of the wisdom that he had that I probably didn't want to hear. I just couldn't help but consider that and consider who he was, and the fact that after all these years, even after, I left the house and left the faith, if you will, that he was still preaching the same story. He was still holding true to what he believed in. And, that was a big part of this also, is that I'm thinking, all right, my parents are the smartest people I know. I don't think they're wrong about this. So, I don't know all the details exactly, how things started to change after that, but I do know that I decided that I needed to start mending my relationships with my parents, with, anyone else that I felt like, I needed to do that with, but also with the Lord. And so slowly, I think I decided to show up in church one day. And I never thought I would have probably stepped back in that church. And what a testament that is to Deanna's dad, who was the pastor there. He was the pastor there when I left the church. And so, for me to say, hey, I'm going to go back to church, and I'm not just going to go back to church, but I'm going to go back to the church where my parents are, where the same pastor is, because I know that it was, it was legit. I knew that it was, I was going to be accepted back. And, but that was hard. That was hard to get back into church. It was hard to go there for the first time, but it was a great decision for many reasons. And,
I do remember, because we've said before, like, I barely knew you. I knew your sister. I thought you and your brother were one person. I thought she had one brother. And we were far enough apart in age, but I do remember, I don't even think I saw you, but there were like whispers across like the entire, Nate Greenfeld's here. And truly, because so many people had been praying for you to come back. Like, just because being so close to your parents, knowing that was like a weight on their heart, that people had been, that it was not like oh my goodness, it was like this excitement of, oh my goodness, he's here, and like he's come to church, and I remember that, and people were, like my Aunt Teresa, my dad, my Aunt Teresa, just people like so excited that you were there, because they'd seen you grow up, so to speak, and then you were gone for so long.
Right. And by that time, I still wasn't out of the situation that I was in. I was still going through some tough things that I needed to finish per the requirements of the state.
Sure.
So it was not an easy decision to make, but I can tell you that it was the best decision that I could have made.
But your parents didn't know you were going to be there. Right?
I don't think so. I don't think I told them ahead of time.
They came and you were sitting there. Yeah.
I came in, and I remember seeing your Uncle Dan when I walked in, and him being kind of surprised. But again, your family has always been very welcoming and such a face of that church, and so to come back in there and see the people that were still there, that were going there when I was leaving there. That was it was embarrassing in a way, but it was also it was good. It was what I needed.
Yeah.
But I still wasn't out of the
thick of it.
The thick of it for my situation, but it was definitely the one of the most important decisions I had ever made in life, and obviously the rest of my story, that wasn't it, and then the rest of my life has just been great since then. That's not how things work, but what did work is that I continue to go to the church. I continued to just be fed by the message of the Lord and the message of the gospel. And even though these were things that I already knew and I'd already believed in my past, it was suddenly becoming alive again, and it was making more sense than it ever had before. And learning that stuff as a child, it's not easy. It's not really that easy to comprehend. But coming back as an adult and being what I've been through, and just getting a taste of both worlds, it was really a no-brainer. And obviously since that time, I've been walking closer with the Lord, and just applying these things to my life. And look, I can tell you this: from that moment, some of the best things that have ever happened in my life began to happen. I'm not saying, obviously, one of them sitting right next to me here, and I'm not saying that I came back to Jesus to get nice things. This is not a prosperity gospel. That's not how this works. But living the way that I was before compared to living for Jesus, it makes a big impact. Yeah. And, you might not realize it at first, but when you look back and you realize, I have a great marriage. I have a great family. I've got great kids. I wouldn't have this had I not made that decision to come back to Jesus. And that's really my story. Again, since then, I continue to make poor decisions here and there, and that's life. We're all sinners, and when you come back to Jesus, you don't just suddenly stop sinning. Life is still hard, and but Jesus just makes how you respond much easier. And again, I'm not sitting here saying that if you want all your problems solved, come to Jesus. That's not the message here. I don't know all the answers. I don't know all the solutions to all the problems, but I am only a witness of Jesus and what he's done in my life. And that's all I can tell you. That I can only be a witness to the impact that having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, what that has done in my life. And I think you can see it by just listening to this story, by watching this channel, by watching the stuff that we're putting online. I'm a witness to his mercy and love. And, I just want to say for anybody out there that knows me, that maybe doesn't know the Lord or doesn't agree with what I'm saying, or just doesn't believe in the same things that I do, that, obviously that's perfectly fine. But I am living proof that my personal relationship with Jesus Christ has made all the difference in my life. I have had a good experience. I shouldn't say a good experience. I've had many experiences on both sides of the spectrum, and I can stand or sit here today and tell you that it makes all the difference. And so anyone that's maybe in the position that I was once in, it's definitely worth a try. And feel free to reach out and ask any questions. Again, I don't have all the answers, but I can be a witness to what it's done in my life.
Yeah. How long were you? How long would you say you had been at the church before we spoke? Because I feel like, not that it has to be, I'm not trying to make it about me. I just mean, I feel like there was a gap there. Like there was a
Sure.
large amount of time. It wasn't like, oh, you came back and then boom, 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 all these things happened.
Right. It was many.
There was years.
Many
before
years
we spoke,
because
and you were coming every Sunday.
Right. Obviously by the point I'm once I started coming back to church, I started making some other huge changes in my life.
Right.
And a lot of good changes, a lot of good stuff. And again, I was working on mending the relationships that I still had that were broken at the time. And I think I was okay with that for a while. I was able to just mend the relationship with my parents, which was probably, it was probably the most important relationship to me at the time. It's still one of the most important relationships to me at this time. And, I did just that. I used to joke that through those years, my parents were my best friends.
I remember when we were dating.
Right.
I remember asking you, being like, so like, who are some of your friends? And you were like, Bob and Tina. They're my best friends.
Yeah. They were, because I just, that's what I needed. I didn't need any other friends at that point. I certainly didn't need to be, associating a whole lot with any of the friends I had before then. Not that, I'm still friends with some of those guys to this day. Mm-hmm. And I always will be. And they, I hope that they can see what an impact those changes made in my life. But, that was the most important thing to me at that time was my relationship with my parents. And I spent a lot of time with that. But I was also working on my relationship with the Lord. And one of those things for me was, man, I got into fishing and hunting like I never did before. And there were many times where I just went out by myself. At the time, I was working in insurance sales, 4 days a week, 10-hour days. I had off every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. No offense, but I had no girlfriend or relationship at the time. All I had was time, and if I did well in sales, I had money. And I was buying new fishing rods. I bought a canoe. I bought a banjo,
surfboard,
and so that was that things were like that for many years. But then eventually, I was like, all right, this has been great, but I'm getting a little lonely. And I can remember asking the Lord, like, Lord, I'm trusting you here. I would really like it if you brought me a significant other, someone to put in my life. And look, it's hard out there. At that point, I think I was even starting to consider, online dating, which is super popular these days. I started to consider that, and luckily we started connecting at some point, and so
because online dating is not for everybody. I remember feeling like that wasn't.
Right. Well, I can tell you that I think I don't think this was online dating, but I think somebody tried to set me up with somebody to go on a date, and man, I ended up sending like my picture, and I got shot down, and that was tough. That was tough. So, to consider like online dating after that, I was like, oh man, this is not going to go well. Not going to
go well. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was many years.
It's a tough scene because, like,
for sure,
you have all. I remember feeling like I have charm in person. Like the picture is not an easy. Yeah, online dating is not easy.
Yeah.
I didn't really do much of it,
but yeah. So luckily, you came along, and again, life just continued to get better, and
even then, it was when we first spoke. I don't know how long it was after that until we even started dating, because we were doing music together for a little while.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember the exact time frame there.
Yeah, I don't remember it either, but
I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
I'm glad that things worked out the way that they did. I'm glad that the Lord just answered my prayer in many ways over and over again.
And it is something to say, like, for me, obviously this isn't the first time I've heard this story, or that we've, maybe not all in one sitting, but that we've talked about just some different things that, you experienced in your past. And I think one of the things that's always crazy is, as you're talking about it, for me, there's always the sense of like, it's almost just like a story, because I never met that person. Like the person that you talk about before you started coming back to church, before you kind of recommitted your life to Christ. Like, I don't know who he is, because that's such a testament in the sense of, he truly changed your life, because I don't know who that guy is.
Right.
You're just such a different person from some of the stories that you've told me.
Sure.
It's like, I just can't even picture that
of
you.
And that's, that's one of the best things about, a relationship with Jesus is that, he forgives me of, my past. And that is a hard concept for people to understand. And I get that. But that was, a hard thing for me, again, to step back in the church knowing who I was and what kind of things that I had been through in the last 10 years, to suddenly come back and expect, the Lord to just be like, hey, welcome back.
Yeah.
It's like you never left. And, that is the story of the prodigal son.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying I walked in there thinking, all right, I'm changing my ways. Everybody, start loving me again. But, this is a story of forgiveness and grace. And it just happens to be something that Jesus offers you always and from the very beginning. And yeah, regardless of who I was, regardless of any things that I've done, that makes all the difference. And that just, it allows me to accept that. And I said to you recently, I don't really think I have a good story.
Which is, that's just crazy to me.
And and I appreciate you saying that. But obviously, I'm always thinking of people that have, much more heavier stories than me. And I'm glad I don't have a story like that. I'm glad that my story is what it is. I went through some hard times because of my own actions, but, I made it through them. And, obviously, I'm sure the Lord pulled me through those times without me knowing. And I'm so glad that he did. And
yeah, especially just the different things, you talking about the guy that was there to talk about his story, I guess, with driving under the influence, but then also about, salvation and the gospel message. And yeah, you sometimes you can look back at moments in your life and be like, wow, God was just eyes on me at that moment of just like, this is where I'm putting you to bring you back to me. Obviously, you put yourself there too. I'm not, but I just mean, he, even in that moment where you felt your lowest, he was like, that's where I'm reaching you. And that's, I have my eyes on you. And, yeah, just so urgent to get you to come back to him, that there's no low you can hit that he's not just yearning for you.
Right.
And that's just such an amazing thought. And for your parents, that's truly a testimony of, train up your child in the way he should go, because obviously that verse is not a promise to the point of, well, as long as you take your kids to church, they'll never leave, the faith. That's not necessarily true, but what they had imparted in you didn't leave. Right. And when you hit the point that you did, even the fact that you were like, I could look at them and say, obviously this is true because of who they are, not just in the things they said to you, but just in the lives they lived. Right.
Well, that makes me as a parent.
It
changes everything.
It feels super, super heavy though.
Sure. Oh well, absolutely. But at the same time, I know that I can do everything possible, and it doesn't mean my kids are gonna, make all the right decisions. And, but there is such there's such a peace knowing that as long as I continue to teach them what I know about Jesus and what he's done for me, that they at least will have
the best chance. Yeah.
They'll at least have somewhere to turn if they don't want to turn back to us.
Yeah.
If they're too afraid or too embarrassed, I at least have peace knowing that they're still gonna know the truth. They're still gonna know, the best answer.
Yeah.
And so I that makes a huge difference for me as a parent. So.
Yeah. No, that's the truth. And in the day-to-day, I'll just believe they'll never do anything wrong.
Right.
Obviously, they do stuff wrong every day, but I just mean,
But yeah, so hey, look, I'm so glad that you guys have tuned in. Thanks for allowing me to speak for this long. This is our longest episode so far. But yeah, I hope that this was meaningful for someone. Obviously I don't get to talk about myself too often, but it feels good to just, even just to talk to you and kind of tell you this story again, which I know I've told you before, but, it's a great reminder for me of God's grace and mercy. And so I thank you guys for tuning in. I thank you guys for sticking around. For anyone that's still listening or watching, if you would, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on our social media pages. Leave a comment. We're going to continue to put out episodes, and we try to put them out weekly. So is there anything else you wanted to throw out there?
Yeah, just, wherever you are, whatever you're going through, God has his eyes on you. And he's just always waiting for you to come to him, whether you've been walking with him for 20 years or you've never walked with him. He is just sitting, waiting for you to come and talk to him. So,
amen. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next episode.